All right. Welcome to Life Extension Live. Don't you love that music? Every time I hear it, I just can't.
I have to.
And I have no rhythm.
Oh. It's so perfect. It gets me right in the mood for our Life Extension Live.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is our Wednesday 3:00 live show. It's my favorite thing that we do, Dr. Gossard. I got to tell you, I just love this. I'm your host, Dr. Mike, and of course, you can see my co-host there, Dr. Crystal Gossard.
Woo! Wow, a fanfare?
Well, I just felt like you needed.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I don't know. All right, so this is a great show. We're going to talk about the title is basically how to make vaccines work better. Now, before we do anything, Dr. Crystal, before we go into anything, you know what I'm going to do.
Set the record straight. Your disclaimer.
Yes. This is so important. I want everybody, please listen. This is so important to us. I have 4 points I want to say before we begin anything about how to make vaccines work better. So the first thing I want you to know, this is not about any specific vaccine, right? This is about vaccines in general. That's number one. Number two, this is not about should you or should you not get vaccines. Life Extension does not have a official formal opinion on that. We believe that is a choice that you need to make for yourself, and hopefully include your doctor in that as well, right? That was number two.
That was two.
That was two. Number three, here's the thing. If you are going to get a vaccine for any infectious disease, whatever that may be, we do believe that there are things you can do to make sure that you're going to get the best effect, the optimal effect from that vaccine.
Yes.
And here's the thing, number four, even if you don't want to take a vaccine, that's fine. What we talk about today can still help your immune system.
Absolutely.
Good?
That's a good point.
That's
the best point.
Yeah. So if you don't want to take it, fine. If you want to take vaccines, fine. But what we're going to talk about really is about supporting the immune system and why that's important. And if you do take a vaccine, how that might actually help the vaccine work better. That's all.
I like that.
Hands off. Hands off, Dr. We're done. We're done.
Drop the mic. No, drop the mic, but you have to pick it back up because we have a lot of information to share with our viewers out there. Speaking of our viewers, I just want to say hi to Lauren. You know, that's why we go live. We could easily record these and just post them on our site. But the reason we're here, we're with you because we want to interact and show our support for you being on. So hello, all of those viewing us and watching.
Yeah.
Hi,
all right.
Stacy. That's my cousin, by the way. Hi, Stacy.
Stacy Moore.
Oh, and my Aunt Linda.
Ooh. People are popping on, and we'd love to see this. So, hey, and don't forget, we do have Holly and Brittany are amazing experts in not only health and wellness, but also in social media. So they're really good at answering questions really quick and concise and accurate. So ask away, and they can handle your questions. So here's where I want to start. Robson, can you throw up that first picture about how vaccines work? There you go. So I like this, Dr. Crystal, because it's simple, it's quick. Why don't you run us through using this image how vaccines work?
Well, absolutely, Dr. Mike. Thank you. Well, what we see here, we are introducing sometimes a weak version of, let's say, a virus, a dead form of that germ. So sometimes you hear the words inactive or even live attenuated forms of the virus. And so in this case, that's what we're seeing in the picture, a weak or a dead form of that germ. And so I use virus, but it could be, you know, any kind of germ or pathogen. And then once we introduce it, we want your body to react. We want your immune system to respond. And the whole purpose is about creating a memory of that germ that we just introduced. So that sparks your immune system to develop antibodies that remember the germ. And then let's say that germ comes back, like the real germ comes back. You already have antibodies that are specific to that type of germ, and your body is able to mount an immune response more efficiently, more effectively. So antibodies that were created initially can fight off that germ.
Yeah. By the way, this image comes from the Mayo Clinic, so I appreciate them producing that work. So if you go to mayoclinic.com, you can actually see this image and some of their explanations for that. But when you really think about it, vaccines kind of have a simple theory behind them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You introduce an inactive form of that infectious agent, maybe a protein of that, what have you. We can talk about the different types of vaccines out there, but the immune system responds to that. And here's what blows my mind. Our immune system can actually remember things, right? Our immune system has memory, and that's the power of the immune system in using vaccines. So I think that was what did you like? I thought that was a great image that the Mayo Clinic put out, right?
I love that image. And I think it's very simple, straightforward, to the point, and it really doesn't get much more complex.
No, it doesn't. That's pretty much it.
It's just the idea. Some of the vaccines, instead of actually introducing, an inactive version of the virus, sometimes our immune system can build up those antibodies by just a little piece of that virus, not even the entire thing, or maybe, parts of the genetic material to make, one protein on the virus.
Yeah, that's the mRNA type vaccines that are being produced for a variety of different infectious diseases. Basically, mRNA is the part of the genetic code that actually makes protein, right? So when you inject this into people, it goes into the cell, and the cell itself will make the protein, just one little piece of the virus. So you're not getting the full virus. That's why it's safe. Right. You're not getting the whole virus, and then your body does react to that. So there are different types of vaccines, but at the end of the day, it's really about, I always use this word, priming the immune system.
Oh, yes.
Setting, like getting it like ready to go, ready to fight, just in case you do happen to be hit by the real virus that's floating out there in the environment, right? That's the gist.
Absolutely. And it's something that that is very helpful for some. I would say that.
Again, and maybe I'll repeat our disclaimer here and there, you guys. We're not we respect people's choices. We're not here to debate whether you should or shouldn't get vaccines of any type. Again, this is not about a specific vaccine. It's really just about the idea that if you are going to get a vaccine, we do think that there are things that can help. Now, so let's go back to this idea of how vaccines work. So at the end of the day, if I'm going to take a vaccine for whatever virus out there, my immune system has to be robust enough to respond to that vaccine, right?
Yes. And that herein lies the challenge and why we're having this discussion, because for many people, especially as you get older, your immune system is just not how it used to be. It's not able to really mount those responses. And so you kind of have to think about, your health history, things that you've gone through, your age, your lifestyle, and say, you know what, am I in the best shape to have the best outcome.
Yeah. Is my immune system in the best shape?
Right.
But,
right.
So, if you look at infectious diseases across the board, viral, whether it's cold, flu, whatever is out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is pretty consistently one group of people, one population of people that are always listed at high risk, right? And that is people over the age of 65. Some might say people over the age of 70, but we're not going to get into that. Older people, older Americans we always seem, and I say we, I'm kind of heading to that age group, Doctor. I don't know why I just said we.
I know, not me, Dr. Mike. Sorry.
I'm much closer to that high-risk age group than you are. I know that. But you understand my point, right? That
yes.
For infection to infection, it doesn't matter. Older Americans are always, I shouldn't say older people.
Yes.
Are always they're automatically put into high-risk groups, right? And so what I wanted to talk about with this, and I know when I discussed this show with you, I was like, I kind of had to set it up for you where I was going with this. If that's the case, if we get older and we seem to be more at risk for these things, what's going on in the immune system that's causing that?
Yes.
Now, we call that immunosenescence.
Yes.
All that is a fancy word for things that occur in the immune system that dampen the immune response, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so we want to reverse those things. So here's what I'm going to do. Dr. Crystal, just hold on.
Okay.
Dr. Crystal and I, we both love to talk.
I know. So I'm like,
yeah, we fight constantly in our by the way, our podcast is Live for Everest. Go check it out at liveforeverest.com. That's what they call a shameful promotion. Anyway. Yeah, plug. Yeah. But so okay, I'm going to say here are the 5 things that we believe characterize immunosenescence, an older immune system. Okay, and it's these things that put us more at risk for bad infections.
Right.
Is that a good way to say? Okay.
I like that. Yes, but because we're all going to get infected, but it's how severe does it get? Yeah.
So let me just say these 5. And then we'll start at number 1, and that's where I will allow Dr. Crystal to talk more. Anyways, she's gonna get at me. Anyway, okay. Number 1. Number 1. Our immune systems stop, or I don't want to say stop. Our immune systems do not make enough brand new immune cells.
Yes.
That's number 1. Number 2, right? We tend to have a buildup of these cells that can remember old infections. We call that memory cells. We tend to get a buildup of these memory cells, and we'll talk about why that might be a problem, right? It's a good thing, but it can also be a problem as we get older.
Yes.
Okay. Number 3, we do not have enough what are called natural killer cells.
First line defenders.
First line defenders, right? Number 4, we tend to get too many suppressor immune cells.
Oh, so we can't mount the response.
Now, I'm going to let you talk here. Just hold on.
I'm in that corner.
And then number 5, we have an imbalance with important immune signaling molecules called cytokines. Those are the 5 things that we've identified at Life Extension as being a part of this idea of immunosenescence. So, Dr. Crystal, let's go back to number 1. Number 1 was we do not make enough brand new immune cells. Why is that a problem?
Well, there are 2 reasons that I can think of to share. One is our bone marrow. And in the bone marrow, this is where you make your blood cells, your red blood cells that carry oxygen to your tissues, and then your white blood cells. White blood cells, those are all of your immune cells. Well, as we get older, the bone marrow is not pumping out or making as many of those white blood cells. That's the first reason. The second reason, when the bone marrow makes those white blood cells, some of those immune cells actually travel to the thymus gland. And the thymus gland, it kind of sits in your neck. And that is the gland that's really responsible for kind of educating those immune cells and helping them to identify, what type of immune cell they are going to be. And one thing we do know, your bone marrow is not making enough, but the thymus gland, believe it or not, begins to shrink. Even in your teens, your thymus gland shrinks. And by the age of 50, your thymus gland is almost gone.
Yeah.
So now we have a situation where the bone marrow is not making as many of those, immune cells. And then the immune cells that are being made aren't becoming specialized. They aren't able to kind of target those new invaders.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different types of immune cells. So at the end of the day, these older immune cells have been fighting for a long time, and we're not replacing them at the rate we should be replacing them. That's the first thing that we see in immunosenescence. The second thing, now that was the first. So the second thing I'd mention is that we tend to build up too many of these memory cells. Now, here's where it's going to be a challenge for you now, Dr. Crystal, because I already said what's amazing about the immune system is that it can remember past infections. And now we're saying, wait a second, too many of those memory cells are a problem.
Right.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, that's true. And so we want the memory, but as those memory cells get older and senile, that's where that name senescence comes in. Those memory cells are supposed to just kind of go away. The body will break them down, recycle them. So what's happening is that they are not going through their normal life cycle, I guess a good way to put it. So those memory cells stick around, and they're not really that great at doing their job anymore because they're old.
They're old. Yeah. Old and grumpy.
Right? They're old and grumpy. Right. And then they start becoming pro-inflammatory. So those memory cells that stick around, they're not going through the life cycle, start spewing out inflammatory molecules, and it just creates a bad space in the body. So, now you're not making enough new ones. The ones that are there can't really do their job that great. They're kind of walking on canes and kind of poking at the pathogen with the cane, not really,
not doing much, right?
Right.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, so Jeff Ray is asking about like nutrition aspects of this. Hey, Jeff, hang in there. We're going to talk about that. I like what you're saying there, and we agree that diet plays an important role. It's not just about supplements and so no, we get that. So just hold on there. So that was number 2, right? Too many. So already number 1, not enough new ones, too many memory ones, and then the third was not enough natural killer cells. Why is that part of immunosenescence?
Right. So natural killer cells, those are your first line defenders. They primarily target viruses. They also, kind of specialize in viruses and cancers. So they're just floating around in the bloodstream. And, if you have a cell that's kind of mutated, turning into a cancer, those NK cells are ready to gobble them up and get them out of the body. And the same with viruses. So you need to have a robust first line of defense, because that can help you from that pathogen from actually taking over. If you can, stay on top of it right away, you can prevent them from, continuing to infect cells. Yeah. So those are the natural killer cells. And when I think natural, they're just naturally floating around in the body.
Listen, they're ready to fight.
Yeah.
Right? They're ready to go. And
they're that's on the front line.
I mean, it makes sense. I don't need to see all this crazy science, which we do have to back this up, but they're ready to go. They're primed. There you go. There's that word, primed. I'm pointing to Crystal because on my screen she's over here. Wait. Yeah, so natural killer cells. We want more of those, right? That was
Yes.
number 3. So number 4, then let's see, that was not enough new, too many memory, not enough natural killer cells. Number 4, too many suppressor cells.
Right.
What is that?
Suppressor cells are great if your immune system is overactive. We do know you kind of want some of those cells to calm down an overactive immune system, but you don't want too many of those. And so when you look at some of these hallmarks of immune senescence that occur as we age, we start seeing that, you just have too many of those cells and you're not able to, it's basically suppressing that fight. It's turning down the heat.
Yeah.
And, whenever you have, let's say it's cold and flu season or something, you want to turn up the heat a little bit so that your body is ready to attack.
Yeah, the way I see that, it always blows. The more and more I study physiology and how the body works, it's smart. It's intelligent.
Right.
It knows that there are times when you need to turn on something, and then it also knows when it's time to turn off those things. And that's the balance between activators and suppressors in the immune system. But obviously, I think people can see this and visualize this. If you have too many suppressors, you're not activating at the end of the day, right? So we want to be able to address too many suppressors. The last thing was an imbalance between important immune signaling molecules. Those are called cytokines. So before you begin, Dr. Crystal, I think what I want people to know is when immune cells talk to each other, there are times when they need to turn up things and be more activated. Those cytokines tend to be, or those signaling molecules tend to be very pro-inflammatory, and they do play an important role. But at the same time, just like we talked about the suppressors, there's also cytokines or signaling molecules that help to calm things down.
Yes.
What have we discovered about getting older and the imbalance that may develop with those signaling cytokines?
Right. So yes, you have too many of the pro-inflammatory cytokines and not enough of the anti-inflammatory cytokines. And a lot of that, some of that actually goes back to our discussion where you have too many of these old memory cells, because, as we mentioned, those memory cells start spewing out pro-inflammatory cytokines. And so now you're making, you have this just hyper, this hot state in the body. I sometimes call it hot when we're talking about the immune system.
I like that.
And the inflammatory, system. It's pro-inflammatory, it's hot, and it's, so one of the cytokines is IL-6. And and then some of you, especially if you have labs through Life Extension or an integrative practitioner, they're testing your CRP. That's directly related to the IL-6 cytokine. And these are protein immune messengers. That's what that cytokine means.
In the IL-6, the CRP, they tend to be on the more active side of all of this. Hey, Robson, there you go. Throw that out for us. So this is based on some really good research that shows the risk of death or mortality when you have elevated IL-6, which Crystal, we have to be careful, but to me, I want the audience to know, think of IL-6 and C-reactive protein as representatives of these immune signaling molecules that are a little too active sometimes. Right. I mean, I think that's a good way to, because there's other ones out there. But if you look at just those two, tell us about what you see on this chart.
Well, it's pretty sad.
Pretty bad.
Right. So if you have elevated IL-6 or CRP, which is what most people will test whenever they have blood tests, look at this. increased risk of dying from any cause in people older than 80, 158% increase if your CRP is elevated.
Yeah.
You look at something like sudden cardiac death or risk of death following heart attack. So this is what we're talking about. You have a massive heart attack. Your risk of having that and you unfortunately dying from that is increased 63%.
Yeah. So if you look at this chart, ultimately what we're saying is that when there is an imbalance of important cytokines, which are these messengers that immune cells use to talk, some of them are, listen, IL-6 is important. You can't live without it. But when you don't balance it with some of the more calming cytokines, this is the kind of stuff that we see. So, yes. Dr. Krista, let's bring this back to those 5 things, right? So we just covered why these 5 things that characterize an older, struggling immune system.
Mm-hmm.
If this is the case, if somebody has some of these characteristics, what if they get a vaccine? Is that vaccine going to work as good as it should? I don't think so.
Well, I would have to agree, because the first thing when you think about it, you need to be able to respond to new pathogens. You need to be able to mount an immune response whenever you receive that vaccine. So you hear sometimes people say, oh, I got my vaccine, I developed a mild fever, or my arm is really sore. Some of those symptoms that you're hearing is a good sign, believe it or not, that your immune system is robust and you're mounting that immune response. And you do find, unfortunately, with older people, you mentioned over 65, there is documented that they aren't mounting the immune response that they need to mount in order for that vaccine to be 100% effective.
Isn't that interesting that maybe a sore arm after a vaccination, if you don't have that, that might be a sign that you're not responding as much as you should. So I think this is all. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? So the whole point of this show is, okay, so we identified the fact that there is this idea, right? That is well established in the literature, that there is immunosenescence, this older immune system, characterized by those 5 things. So what are we going to do about this? So let's first talk about the nutrients, and then we can discuss, I think his name was Jeff, and some of his questions about food. I'm going to name off 3 nutrients. You can't see my hand. 3 nutrients.
I can see. Yes.
And let's discuss these, because they are well researched, and they help to reverse some of those characteristics of an older immune system. By the way, you can check all this out. There's a great article that Life Extension published at lifeextension.com/immunity. And you can see it right there on the screen. So number 1 is Sustanch. Number 2 is Pu'erti. Number 3 is reishi mushroom. Let's start with Sustanch.
Yes.
What is that, Dr. Krista?
Well, some people call it ginseng of the desert. And I always think about Sustanch because it's actually a parasitic plant. So it doesn't contain chlorophyll. It actually gets its nutrients from the plants around it. Pretty nice. Wild, huh?
He's a bully.
It's the bully plant. However, Sustanch is one of the active components in Sustanch called echinocosides. And research has been shown to increase some of those more specific immune cells, like your T cells. We didn't really get into details on some of the names of the immune cells, but some of those those first those specific cells. And I think of T cells as kind of like the orchestrators. They kind of help those cells that produce the antibodies. They kind of tell those cells that need to produce antibodies, hey, you need to produce some antibodies.
In what you're referring to is the body now is able to make more of these newer cells, right?
Yes.
And that helps that first point about immunosenescence.
Also in research, we see that it's increasing those NK cells, natural killer cells. So now we're seeing we're targeting at least 2 of the 5 kind of key things that we've talked about related to immune senescence. How do we increase those T cells being able to respond to new pathogens? And then how do we ramp up those first responders?
Yeah. So that's Sustanch. So Sustanch is like a great place to start to help to reverse some of those characteristics of an older immune system. The second one I had mentioned is Pu-Erh-T, which sounds gross, but it's not. Maybe if Holly can like spell. Oh, she did.
Did she spell it out for us?
Yeah, I see it on. I see it. So it's Pu-Erh-T.
Oh,
there you go. It's basically a highly oxidized tea. It's very black, but it brings out a lot of really important components for the immune system. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so Pu-Erh-T, it's a fermented black tea. And we all know tea is all the same plant. Your green tea, your white tea, they're not fermented at all. And then you have the oolong tea or the black tea.
It's all the same plant.
It's all the same plant. It's fermented. And then when you look at Pu-Erh-T, it goes through an extended fermentation process, which really helps to bring out some of the polyphenols. One is the theobromins that's in the Pu-Erh-T. And this is something it's been used for, for thousands of years. And it's actually a really hot commodity. I mean, it can ferment for up to 50 years. So when we talk about fermented, it's similar to how you let wine age. And the longer the this tea ages, the more you get those polyphenols out of there. And what's nice about Pu-Erh-T and the immune system is Pu-Erh-T helps to start at the very beginning. We talked about bone marrow at the beginning of our talk. And this is the site where your immune cells are made. And so we see in research, Pu-Erh-T helps to support the bone marrow's function and help to support the bone marrow with making new immune cells.
Yeah, so important. I equate this to kimchi. Like there's Pu-Erh-T, and it rhymes too. That's why I like it. That's how I can remember it. It's Pu-Erh-T, which is like kimchi. You like that, don't you? It's good.
Stop.
And by the way, I'm on a kick.
Both fermented. Okay, I get that.
I'm on a kick right now. I don't know what it is. I've been craving kimchi, and I've been eating spicy kimchi for like a week now. I love it. It's one of my favorites. But it's the same idea.
Let's say that kimchi is great for the immune system as well.
Yeah, for sure. But it ferments. That fermentation process is extremely important, and that's what Pu-Erh-T does. Now, that last one I had mentioned was reishi mushroom, right?
Yes.
I'll tell you a story about reishi. Okay. Do not drink reishi tea. You're laughing, Dr. Chris, because I told you this.
I've had reishi tea. Remember?
Yeah, and I did too, and I almost died, and you love it. It's horrible. Just admit it. It's horrible.
All right. Maybe it was masked because it was in, you mix anything with chocolate and it's good.
I had like, I don't remember what it was. It was reishi tea, and no, never again. Why do we add reishi to this idea of immunosenescence?
Well, reishi is really helping with several aspects of the immune system. And I love reishi because of all of the research. There are over 5,000 studies with reishi. So it's one of those.
5,000?
Yes, over 5,000. I mean, yes, reishi is truly one of my favorite go-tos for
I bet they were doing it in capsule form, not the tea, though.
Well,
people would not last in those trials.
They would drop out, Dr. Mike.
They would drop out.
Well, but so reishi is doing everything. Here's a couple of the things that I love. One, it's boosting some of your natural internal antioxidants, catalase, SOD or superoxide dismutase, glutathione. So, I mean, that alone is enough to make me want to take it. But then we also start seeing that it's supporting the natural killer cells that we talked about. It's supporting T cell production. So we're working on the front lines. We're working the very specific immune cells.
Wait a second, Doctor. So Sue, who's watching the show right now, she says reishi plus peppermint tea is great.
Ooh,
I'm gonna argue with that. I don't know if anything can improve reishi.
Yeah, and Jeff is also saying cocoa, good prebiotic. And Jeff, I have to mention something you said that I loved earlier about hormesis. That's where you kind of stress the body a little bit. That's helpful for the immune system. And intermittent fasting, or just fasting in general, is a form of a strategy to kind of help to boost the immune system.
Nice. Wow. So, so let's back up real quickly and let's kind of summarize everything that we've presented today. All right. So I'm going to do this. Dr. Crystal, you tell me, you speak up if I'm not saying it right.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, this is not about specific vaccines. Number two, this is not about whether you should or should not get vaccines. That's a decision between you and your doctor. Life Extension has no position. Please understand that.
Yes.
Number three, if you have decided vaccines are right for you, consider the idea that maybe the immune system, especially as you get older, is not quite as robust as it should be. So if you want the vaccine to work as best as it can, how about do some of these things that we've identified that maybe cause the immune system to be a little old and sluggish? Right? And that would include things like Sustanch. That would include things like Pu'er tea, reishi. Don't forget the basic vitamins and minerals. D, C, zinc. I would throw selenium in that. Lactoferrin. That was one of my favorites. I'm surprised I didn't say that. You probably are too. All of those things, all of those nutrients simply help your immune system to be what it can be, which means it just means maybe you'll get the best effect out of the vaccine. And the last thing I'm going to say is, even if you don't want to take a vaccine, that's fine. That's between you and your doctor. Everything we just discussed could be very helpful to you.
Yes.
You didn't interrupt me, so I said it all right.
You said it right. And I don't even have anything to say after that. That was a nice closing argument.
Yeah. Isn't that an art? I'm just making a position for us.
I know.
All right.
It's great.
Listen, I want to thank everybody that's joined us today. Hopefully this was helpful. Let us know. Like, share. Hey, we're going to start registering for these live shows so you never miss one. So please follow us on Facebook. And don't forget, if you want to learn more about these nutrients, we have a great article that our magazine published, I think just a few months ago, actually, and it's lifeextension.com/immunity. Dr. Crystal?
Yes.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Robson, thank you for running everything in the background. No one sees you, but thank you. We appreciate that. And hey, listen, everybody take care and look for next Wednesday. We go live every Wednesday at 3:00. And check out the podcast, liveforeverish.com. I'm Dr. Mike. Take care.